I would like to also acknowledge that we are on ceded lands, and I pay my respects to the original owners, past and present. So I want to start my presentation asking you a simple question. Do you know this sound? Okay, it stopped there. I know it's a torture, right? Do you know this sound? You know? Dial-up internet connection, right? You know when you read an article about the sound of the universe or the sound or the noise of a black hole? This is the sound of the internet, at least 20 years ago, not today, right? But this is how we could connect to the internet in the past. And I'm bringing this here for us to think about how internet and digital technologies were so detached from our daily lives. You know, we had an expression, at least in my house. We would say, tonight, I'm gonna connect or surf on the internet. And then I would wait until midnight, of course, go to this tiny room where half of it was the PC, and then log into a website after, of course, listening to that noise. But it was so apart from our daily lives, right? In time and space. Whereas nowadays, we have digital technologies everywhere. We have digital technologies as a constant part of our lives. And we cannot take for granted the internet and these digital technologies. It's like what Hein said here. The internet and digital technologies are deeply embedded in social systems, embodied, and every day. We're basically cyborgs, right? But not cyborgs like this. We don't have chips in our heads. We don't have to worry about that, at least not for now. But more like cyborgs in the sense that these digital technologies, they are extended parts of our bodies. We're more and more relying on them for our daily activities, right? And this is kind of forming or making us feel different with our bodies. So it's causing new forms of embodiments and new forms of subjectivities. It's changing how we're behaving, how we're interacting with others, how we're thinking about ourselves along the way as well. So some authors are calling this the everywhere. Basically, everywhere in the city, we have devices and other things built into the very fabric of urban environments. So everywhere we go, 24/7, things are collecting our data. As Nathan also said, here in our pockets, we have people collecting our data, right? So it's everywhere, even in places that we wouldn't think about. Like, for example, this park in Lygon Street. I was there the other day and I saw this amazing thing and I took a picture of it. Like, they're collecting our data to manage our parks. That's great, right? This is so powerful, actually, that Kitchen Dodge have come up with this idea or this concept of the code space. Because we're so reliant on codes that codes are producing space. For example, can you imagine an airport functioning with all, you know, that massive place functioning well without all those digital systems that are supporting that space? And the same thing is happening with our cities, you know? We're more and more relying on digital technologies, on codes, on the internet, Wi-Fi, and so on, to produce the urban space. But it's also very contextual. And of course, there are a lot of biases and problems related to that, as so many authors have already put it, because after all, codes are a human product. But still, we rely on them to make urban spaces more manageable. It's like what Scott McQuire, professor at UniMelb, has termed smart cityism. This idea, or ideology, if you will, that we can and should use big data to produce more efficient, more predictable, and more controllable urban environments, our smart city, right? And here comes my question. What about our creativity? Because creativity is something that is rather unplanned, right? It's often said that it's quite uncontrollable, quite sporadic. It's quite, you know, we usually say that in a very highly controlled environment, creativity will not flourish. For example, take Richard Sennett. He says that in this smart city framework, actually, they are dumbing down us. They're dumbing down because it's making our lives too easy. You just press a button, you don't think about what you're doing, you're basically told what to do, you don't face resistances. And for Sennett, resistances are the spurs of creativity. But I don't think it's that simple. I think it's a bit more complex than that, because I think that creativity is not dead in the big data city. I think it lingers on, and we're not dumb, at least no more than before. So I came up with this idea of unbundled creativity. Unbundled because it is logically, spatially, and temporally discontinuous. So it's not that dial-up internet connection anymore, that we had to go to a specific place and time to use the internet. You have Wi-Fi today, right? So it's quite fragmented how you use your brain with the technology. And I came up with 5 basic characteristics of this unbundled creativity. First one is that we are more and more depending on technologies to be creative. Imagine, for example, today, architects without CAD software, or artists that want to show off their work without social media, or academics that want to write without Microsoft Word or without PowerPoint, right? I think my presentation would be 10 times less creative if not with the PowerPoint. But at the same time, we're creating a context of hyper unpredictability, because creativity, like we said, is rather unpredictable. The internet as well is quite unpredictable. So kind of opposite to what smart city proponents advocates and want, we are creating a scenario, an urban environment that is even more uncontrollable. And the problem is, I think we are also creating this scenario of endless creative labor. Let's stop to think about this. We are living in this hyper-connected, commodified society where everything is simultaneous, everything is monetized. So I think we have this constant pressure, but at the same time, this constant stimulation to be creative all the time and to produce creatively all the time. But at the same time, I think that this is rather individualistic. We're more and more individualistic. We're more and more in partnerships with machines or with humans, but mediated by machines. And this, of course, causes, as I said before, new forms of embodiments and subjectivities. So yeah, creativity, I think it's getting more commodified for sure. It's getting more tech-dependent, more individualistic, but also more unpredictable, more discontinuous. And I think this is also causes of resistance. So that's why I think one of the reasons creativity is not dying. So, you know, we might think, for example, these TikTok videos are rather, very silly and alienating, but I think they're embedded in this very, very complex system of social existence that we don't know for sure the role they play specifically as individual nodes in this very complex system for our creativity. I don't know, you may come up with a theory just watching these things that are very silly, right? So smart city and this idea of big data city, it's here to stay, right? And we have a lot of challenges with that in terms of, like we said, biases, tech addiction, relying more and more on these codes. But at the same time, people are resignifying technologies and spaces. For example, do you think this is just a laundry machine? It is just a laundry machine, right? But people also resignify this laundry machine. For Harry Potter fans. So it's a musical instrument as well, the laundry machine. So yeah, I think people are experimenting with technologies, and like this, everywhere in the city, with many different places and technologies, people are experimenting, which makes the big data not just an accumulation of data. Of course, we're providing data with that to somebody, to some big companies. But along the way, I think people are being creative as well. And that's what's important to think about big data here. And don't get me wrong, I think big data is super important, like we just saw from our past speakers. But at the same time, it's important to see that big data, we are not the extended parts of big data, but the other way around, right? Like I said, as a cyborgs. The data is an extended part of us, not the other way around. So back to my question, is there space for creativity in the big data city? I think yes, metaphorically, as we said, we have creativity, but it's a different kind of creativity. It's a creativity, like we said, it's discontinuous, fragmented, commodified. So it's not the kind of creativity that is often romanticized in literature, even academic literature. And thinking in terms of material space as well, as we can see in this diagram, there is space for creativity, but again, it's a different space. It's a code space like we saw before. It's a hybrid space that blurs the boundaries of what is virtual, what is material, what is work and leisure, what is meant to control, and what is used for creative purposes. So I'm currently using this framework to think about the city and big data and creativity, because it is important for us to understand how each space is interacting with us. Because each different space, we're going to have different, I would say, cues and make us feel differently and produce different aspects of our creativity. With that in mind, I think that's it for me. I'm happy to hear comments and questions. Thank you all.